We have a crisis in the world, tremendous crisis, and also crisis in our consciousness, in us. I see the urgency of change, radical revolution, mutation in the mind. I see it. It is necessary. There is complete quietness of the mind, and that which is silent has vast space. Only then that which is nameless comes into being.
This is Urgency of Change, the Krishnamurti podcast. What prevents you from seeing is your condemnation and justification, which is the past. When you listen and see without condemnation, you are free of the past. Hello and welcome to episode 258 of Urgency of Change. Each episode of the Krishnamurti podcast is based on a significant theme of his talks. Extracts from the archives have been selected to represent Krishnamurti's different approaches to these universal and timelessly relevant topics. This episode's theme is seeing. Upcoming topics are leisure, trust, and abstraction. This is a podcast from Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. Please visit our website at kfoundation.org, where you can find a popular collection of quotes, a variety of featured articles, along with a wide selection of curated material in the index of topics, allowing easy access to book, audio and video extracts. Our online store stocks the best of Krishnamurti's books and ships worldwide. We also offer free downloads, including a selection of booklets. You can also find our regular Krishnamurti quotes and videos on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook at Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review or rating on your podcast app. This episode on seeing has 3 sections. This first extract is from Krishnamurti's 4th talk at Brockwood Park in 1970 and is titled Seeing is Action.
It is one of the most important questions to solve, to bring about a complete unity, a feeling of sense of not me. It is this self-centered activity, at whatever level it be, socially, economically, or religiously. This self-centered activity is the factor of division. The me and the not me. We and they. And is it ever possible to go beyond this self-centered concern, activity? If anything is possible, then one has a great deal of energy. What wastes energy is seeing that is not possible and just drifting, as most of us do. Going from one trap to another. And how is this possible? How is a human being recognizing what he is, a great deal of the animal in him, aggression, violence, a great deal of stupid, mischievous activity, caught in various beliefs and dogmas and separatist theories and formulas, revolting against one particular system or establishment and falling into another establishment, which he himself recognizes and doesn't call that conformity. So, seeing all that, what is one to do? This has been, I think, historically, as well as in every human being at least who is sensitive and alive, aware of the things that are happening around him, must inevitably ask, not intellectually, not theoretically, not posit a hypothesis, but actually find out how to live. Not at few odd, rare moments, but throughout the day and night and years and till the end. A life that's completely harmonious, without conflict in himself and therefore with the world. And this conflict, as one observes, arises from this self-centered concern, giving such tremendous importance to its appetites, whether it be sexual, economic, or what you will. This has been, at least to all sensitive and people who are aware and serious, this has been always the question. How to go beyond his own petty little, shoddy little self. Though you may call it God and soul and Atman and all the rest of the words that one invents, pleasant sounding words to cover up a corruption. How is one to go beyond it? And so, not being capable, we have invented an outside agency. Which is environment. Change the environment, the social structure, the economic business, and man will inevitably also change. That has proved utterly wrong and false and untrue. The communists insist on that theory. And the religious people have said, believe, accept, put yourself in the hands of something outside of yourself. And that too has lost its sting, its vitality, because it's not real. It's merely an intellectual invention, a verbal structure which has no depth whatsoever. And then one has tried to identify oneself with a nation, with a larger group, and that too has brought dreadful wars and misery and confusion. Ever bringing about division. Now, seeing all this, what is one to do? Escape to some monastery? Run off and learn Zen meditation? Or accept some philosophical theory and commit oneself to that? Or meditate as a means of escape and self-hypnosis? So when one sees all this, actually not verbally or intellectually, and seeing all that as leading nowhere, doesn't one invariably throw aside all that? Deny completely and totally all that. All the various forms of self-identification with something larger, expecting the environment to shape man, laws, tyranny, and also seeing the absurdity, the falseness, the superficiality of beliefs. Noble or ignoble. Does one actually set aside all that? Or do we still play with all that? If one has, and that's quite a task, because that implies a mind that's completely capable of looking at things as they are, without any distortion, without any interpretation, according to one's like or dislike, seeing things actually as they are, both outwardly and inwardly. Then what takes place with the quality of the mind? The mind being not only the nervous organism, but also the whole brain with all its memories, experiences, knowledge, based on security, because the brain can only function efficiently, healthily, sanely, when it is completely secure. Now, seeing all this and acting, not seeing and action are the same, not the division between seeing and acting. That is, when you see something very dangerous, threatening, there is immediate action. In the same way, if you see all this that man has invented, that human beings have constructed as a means of escape from one's own tortures and agonies, loneliness, despairs. When one sees the danger of all that, there is immediate action. After all, that is intelligence. Intelligence is the seeing of the danger and acting. Therefore, there is no division between seeing and acting. Observing what is actually going on, both outwardly and inwardly, and the very perception of that is action. And when one doesn't act, then insanity begins. Then imbalance takes place. Then we say, I cannot do that. It's too difficult. What shall I do? I hope we are communicating with each other. That is, not only verbally, but actually seeing things as they are. So, meaning of this kind of gathering is not merely to spend a sunny morning in a rather uncomfortable seat in a tent, but rather to listen to, so that we find out what is true. Not according to the speaker or according to your own particular like or dislike or idiosyncrasy, but in talking over together, discovering for ourselves what is true. Which means giving real attention. One cannot possibly understand anything unless you give your attention, unless you hear completely. But the hearing is one thing and listening is another. If you merely hear a lot of words and argue about it and discuss intellectual of like and dislike, then it's of very little meaning. Whereas if you listen, really with your heart and mind, listen to find out. Because it's a very serious thing we are involved in. This is not an entertainment. And as human beings caught in all this confusion, misery, and the appalling things that are going on in the world, for which we are responsible as human beings, we have to act. We have to do something. Not in Jordan, but where we are, as we are. And so one has to really understand what action is. As we said, when there is a division between inaction as idea and then action, the concept and then the action follows, the formula and later on the action. In that division there must be conflict. I don't know if you see that. First, we have an idea, don't we? What we should do, what we should think. A concept. And that concept comes about through our conditioning. And so there is concept, formula, and idea, and later on action. And therefore there is always conflict wherever there is division. I don't know if you are seeing this together. And this conflict between the idea and action is the most confusing factor in life. And is it possible to act? Please do listen to this. Is it possible to act without idea? The idea first and action later. Is it possible to act without the ideation taking place, which is the seeing and the acting together, which we do when there is great danger or a crisis? There is instant action. And is it possible to live like that? Which is a way of life of sanity. That is it possible to see clearly the danger, let us take, of nationalism, or the danger of religious beliefs, which separates man against man, the division between races, as the Arab, the Jew, the Hindu, the Muslim, all that nonsense that goes on. Seeing the danger of division, the very seeing of it, not the believing in that it is false. I don't know if I'm... Belief has nothing whatever to do with perception. On the contrary, belief prevents perception. If you have a formula or a tradition or a prejudice that you are a Hindu, a Jew, an Arab, or a communist, and so on. Am I going too fast? Doesn't matter, it's up to you. That very division does breed antagonism, hate, violence. And when there is this division between the concept and action, there must be conflict. And this very conflict is neurotic, insane. So can the mind see, and the very seeing is the doing. That demands attention. That requires an alertness of not only visual alertness, but a quickness of the mind, a sensitivity. One sees this, that you need to have a clear, sharp, sensitive, intelligent awareness. And then one says, how am I to get it, to capture it? There is, when you put that question, there is already division. But whereas, when you see the actual fact of what is going on, and the very seeing of it is the action. I hope this is clear. Because after all, every form of conflict inwardly or outwardly. There is no division as the outer and the inner. Every form of conflict is distortion. I don't think we realize this sufficiently clearly. We're so accustomed to conflict, struggle, and we feel when there is no conflict we are not growing, we are not developing, we are not creating, we are not functioning properly. We want resistance. And one doesn't see the implications of resistance, which is division. So can the mind act without resistance, without friction, seeing that any form of friction, any form of resistance is division, and therefore action brings about a neurotic, conflicting states. So when there is perception, observation, or seeing and acting, then the activity of the self-center comes to an end. I don't know if you see that. After all, the self, the me, the I, the ego, the libido, whatever that is inside, that's the observer, the sensor, the controller, the thinker, the experiencer, and so on. He is the past. The self is the past. And the past is knowledge. The self, the me, is the center of all knowledge, of this psychological knowledge, not the scientific knowledge or the medicine and so on. So when there is any challenge, response from the center as the me is the response of the past. And therefore there is conflict. I don't know if you see all this. Whereas the seeing, the instant seeing and the instant acting, the self doesn't enter at all. Therefore there is no division. The center, as the observer, is the Hindu, the Arab, the Jew, the Christian, the communist, and all the business. When he responds, it is the response of the past, response of his conditioning. It is the result of thousands of years of propaganda, religious, social, whatever it is. And that which is the past, when it responds, must create division, inaction, and therefore conflict. Whereas when you see something very clearly in that, there is no division.
The second extract is from the second talk in New Delhi 1962 and is titled Seeing Without Contradiction.
to remove contradiction is very important. To be free of contradiction. Because contradiction breeds conflict. I'm talking inwardly, psychological contradiction. The double talk of the politician. And most of us indulge in that double talk. And if one is really going to the very end of any thought, to introduce contradiction prevents further journey. You're caught in contradiction. So, what we are pointing out is to see something totally without contradiction. So, to see that you are angry. What is involved in that seeing? The fact is you are angry. And to see that fact without denying it, without justifying it, without saying it is right, it is wrong, just to be aware choicelessly of that fact that you are angry. And that very fact that you are angry will bring about an action which is not contradictory. Then you don't pretend or persuade yourself or discipline yourself not to be angry. Because in that very act of seeing, there is no contradiction. And this fact of seeing is very important to understand. Because on that point I'm going to talk all the time. Because that is the only liberating factor. The act of seeing, the act of listening. And you don't have to do a thing. But to see so completely, you must be attentive. And attention denies contradiction. You can't attend if you are condemning. You can't give your whole attention if you are not trying to be jealous. It's only when you are completely aware that you are jealous or envious, completely, then that fact brings its own energy. And you need tremendous energy to have this attention. And the act of seeing is attention. I am not talking of something mystique, something, a special process, a new way of thinking and all that absurdity. We are moving from fact to fact. And the act of seeing without condemnation, judgment, evaluation, without the word which is thought, to look, to observe every movement, every feeling, You will see if you so pay attention to everything that you see and feel, and if you give your total attention to the problem of authority, then you will find out of it comes a new mind, a fresh mind. That fresh mind isn't created by thought, by modern education, by going to the temple, reading the Gita, or the Quran, or the Bible everlastingly. That mind comes into being only through seeing. And to see, you must question desperately. And the very act of seeing is very destructive, because it destroys the society in which you have been brought up. You're no longer concerned with the reformation of that society. You can't reform society. Because society is the result of the past. And if you reform it, you're still in the past. But a man who has broken down the past completely, and it is possible, then being alone, he may affect society. That is irrelevant. So, what is important and essential is to see that a new mind is necessary. And a new mind cannot be brought about by the tricks of the mind, which is thought. The new mind can only come into being when there is a questioning of the society in which we have been brought up. And you cannot question if you have a motive. And so seeing authority, seeing obedience, frees the mind from obedience. Because after all, what prevents from seeing is your condemnation, your justification, which is the past. So when you look, when you see, when you listen without condemnation, you're free of the past. You can look. And to so look, you need to have attention. Attention is the concentration, the essence of energy. And that energy only comes into being when you are constantly looking, watching, observing, seeing, questioning. So out of this extraordinary listening and seeing, the mind has lost its mooring, its connection with the past. The mind has its anchor in the past. Mind is the past. But when the mind gives complete attention to seeing, it has broken down the past. And it is only such a fresh, young, innocent mind only can go beyond the limitations which the mind has placed upon itself. It's only then is it possible to discover for oneself as an individual who is no longer part of society, to find out if there is the immeasurable or if there is not the immeasurable.
The final extract in this episode is from Krishnamurti's second talk in Saanen 1961 and is titled Total Seeing.
It is important to see the totality of order, the total thing, not just take little bits of it which suits you or which doesn't suit you. The totality of something. To see something totally. As you see the total tree. And that's very difficult to see something totally. Now I'd like to, if I may, this morning discuss that with you. What is seeing something totally? We have discussed, rather I have talked a little bit about order, authority, conformity. If one can see the totality of that, not partially, then you will see that the brain, that the mind is free from this demand for order, and therefore free from following. You follow the national leader, hero, the legends and all that tummy rot. Or whether you follow your particular teacher, guru, and your saint, and all the rest of it. Now, what is seeing totally? First of all, what is seeing? Is seeing merely the word? Please follow this little bit carefully, if you don't mind. If you're not too tired, if it isn't too hot, please follow this little bit, if I may ask you attentively. What is seeing? When you say, I see, what do you mean? Don't please answer me. Just go with me. Not that you're following me, because I'm not your authority, and you're not my followers. I haven't got any, thank God. But we are together inquiring into this question of seeing, because it's very important, as you will discover for yourself. When you say, I see, is it the word? You understand? The word, seeing. Or do you actually see? you say, I see that tree, that flower, do you actually see, or you are merely satisfied with the word, I see? Do think about it, don't. We have got several meetings, so we'll take it slowly. And when you actually are not caught by the words, do you actually see the tree? See. Or do you say, oh, that's an oak, that's a pine, that's a this elm, this and that, and pass it by? Which again indicates that the word prevents you from seeing the tree, and therefore you're not free of the word. Therefore you're not seeing. Am I making myself clear? Good. Because please, what I'm talking about is going to be a little more difficult presently, so let's go slowly. So, you can only see when the word is not important. When the word has been set aside, the symbol, the term, the name. And then you can look. When the name is not important at all, then, and the memory connected with the name, you follow? All the reminiscence, the remembrance associated with a word, then you can look. And it's a very arduous thing to do, to look. You don't look at me. You got certain ideas about me. I've got a certain reputation. I am this, I am so. That is preventing you from seeing. If you can strip the mind of all that rubbish, then you can see. That seeing is entirely different than the seeing through words. Now, can you look at your gods, at your favorite pleasures, fears, ambitions? Look, and your feelings of nobility, of spirituality and all that business, can you look stripped of the word? And that requires, that is very arduous, and very few are willing to look. And that seeing is total, because it's no longer associated with the word and the memory of that word and the feelings that word evokes. So, seeing something totally implies that there is no division. That there is no reaction to what is being seen. merely seeing. And that seeing, it's what is seen, not what your opinions, your reactions about what is seen, but the seeing the fact. That itself brings about a series of actions which is disassociated from the word and memory and ideas. You understand? This is not an intellectual feat, though the description of it may sound intellectual, verbal or mental, but the actual experiencing of it is not intellectual. And being intellectual is stupid anyhow, any more than being emotional is equally stupid. So, seeing something totally, seeing the total fear, frees the mind from fear. Now, we don't see anything totally because we're always looking at things through our brain. Which doesn't mean that the brain should not be used. On the contrary, we must use our brain to its highest capacity. But it is the function of the brain to break up things. It has been educated to observe, to learn in part, not totally. To think, because to think is the function of the brain. To think of the world, of the earth, totally implies no nationality, no tradition, no gods, no churches, not the division of fields and colored maps. Seeing human beings, not as Europeans and the Americans or Russians or Chinese or as Indians. Seeing man. And the brain refuses to see the total thing, the total earth and man on it. Because the brain is conditioned through education, through tradition, through centuries of propaganda. And so the brain, with all its mechanical habits, its animal instincts, its urge to remain in safety and security, can never see anything totally. And yet it is the brain which dominates us. It's the brain that's functioning all the time. Please don't jump to something else. That there must be a spirit which must get into touch with and all that nonsense. I'm going step by step, follow it. If you want to follow it, you'll follow it. If not, it's all right. So the brain is conditioned. Through habit, through propaganda, which is influence, through education, and all the daily influences, all the pettiness of life, the everlasting chatter of the brain. And with that brain we look. Please follow this. I'm not saying something abnormal, something extraordinary out of the East. I'm not. So that brain looks at the tree, listens to what is being said, reads a poem, looks at a picture, listens to a concert. Always partial. Always in terms of I like and I don't like. What is profitable, what is not profitable. And it's the function of the brain to react. Otherwise you will be destroyed overnight. So, it is the brain with all its reactions, its memories, its urges, compulsions, conscious as well as the unconscious. It is that brain which looks and sees and listens and feels. So the brain, being in itself partial, in itself the product of time and space, of all education, all that which I have described, it cannot see totally. It can't see the tree totally. It says, I don't like that tree, too smelly, it is this, it is that, it is dozen things. Always comparing, always judging, always evaluating. But it's the function of the brain to evaluate. But when to see things totally, the brain must be in abeyance, quiet. I hope you are understanding what I'm talking about. Rather, I'm explaining myself clearly. So the seeing totally of something can only take place when the brain is highly sensitive and recognizes its own limitations, highly responsive to reason, to doubt, to question, and knows the limitations of reasoning, questioning, doubting. And therefore it does not allow itself to interfere with what is being seen. Then you will see if the brain can go as far as that. And one has to. If you want to discover something other than the product of the brain, which is that immeasurable reality, which is something cannot be put into words, the unnameable, the unknowable. If one really wants to find out, the brain must go to its limit. Questioning, arguing, discussing, wanting to find out, and knowing its own limited, partial existence. And that very experience of knowing the limitation quietens the mind, the brain. Then there is a total seeing. And when one can see the totality of order, not that you must have disorder and the fear of disorder, what is order and all the rest of it, which we have more or less, I don't want to go too much into it, because we're concerned for the moment the experience of seeing something totally. Then you will see that out of total comprehension of order comes a wholly different kind of order. Surely, the right order can only come when there is distraction. Distraction of the mind that demands order. Of a brain that says, I must have everything in order to be secure. When the brain has shattered its own creations, its own soil in which it breeds all kinds of fancies, illusions, desires, wishes, then out of that shattering, there is an order. There is a love which creates its own order.